Ladies and gentlemen, it is time now for the Public Safety and Homeland Security Subcommittee. So if y'all come on in, and I'm going to call on Chairman Warehouse, if you would please give us a little devotion here. We need it.
Well, devotion or a prayer? Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this opportunity to gather here to work on the state's business. We pray that you would give us wisdom in all things that we do and say. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. We have Senate Bill 406 before us, and the author is being detained in another committee right now. So I'm going to call on a person that I know can explain this quite well to us. Representative Rick Townsend, if you'll come up to the podium, please. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate this opportunity. As you said, he's speaking for another committee, so I'm carrying the bill, so I'd be glad to help out any way I can. Basically, this is a school mapping bill, and what I like about it, one thing you need to know, it kind of puts everybody on the same page. Schools, where as a former principal and superintendent, but I'm thinking, putting my principal's hat on now, we tend to change hallways, change 10 room numbers. We shouldn't do that, but we do. So you're supposed to update your maps on an annual basis, but you're also supposed to make sure people know where you're going. And so when you tell 911 it's in the English hallway, they have to kind of figure out where that English hallway is, or where's Miss Jones's room and things like that. So if you look at it, where you look at and start doing the standard mapping of quadrants and things like that, how to do it, be specific about the coordinates and everything else, just to make sure everybody's on the same page with your emergency services across the state. So when you do have movement within those emergency services, we know our police officers do move districts, firefighters move districts, things like that. 911 people move around a little. It'd be speaking the same language statewide instead of one for another county, one for this county. So to me, that's the biggest part of the bill, of standardizing this area. What the thing when I first talked about it with the author was, this is not a vendor-specific bill. It's a design or whatever else. I know of at least 10 vendors out there that does this. They can also do it themselves. They don't have to use a vendor if they want. It's one of those where they can, if they've got a good person on staff who understands mapping, they can do this themselves. School systems can. You do have the current safety grants available to people. We're passing that again out of the House and Senate, so there's money there for them as well. Again, going back to getting everybody on the same page, and I'll be glad to entertain any questions, or I could talk a lot more about it and get in the weeds, just depending how far you want me to go.
I think we're going to have some weeds here.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, go ahead.
Thank you, and you might have answered it in the very last sentence. Because the bill starts out in a preface by subject to available funding.
Correct.
But then at the end you said, so could we use that $49,000 per school to do this?
You could. You
Okay.
can do that.
Thanks.
And they're actually, we didn't want to really promise this yet. That's why we got that clause in there. They are working on some other grant funding as well in addition to that, but not in place of it, but in addition to.
Okay, do we have other questions from the committee? Okay, if you'll step aside for a moment.
Sure.
Now, I'm going to ask Austin Sprague to come to the podium, please.
Members of the committee, good afternoon. My name is Austin Sprague. I'm a prior Marine Special Operations Officer, and I represent a company called Critical Response Group, or CRG. We're one of the many vendors who do this type of work. We specialize in digital mapping of schools for emergency response. You can see a list of all the other vendors in your folders up there. But I'd like to just introduce you a little bit to the concept of where this was kind of born out of. So a lot of the principles and philosophies that you see in this bill are derived from best practices developed in the special operations community, specifically how we would plan and execute missions overseas. And for us, it wasn't about how do you navigate a school campus. It was about how do you coordinate a mission in a remote location, place you've never been to before, at night, under a great deal of stress, and with a multitude of agencies involved. So to address this, what the military did was develop a standardized mapping technique called a gridded reference graphic. We take an aerial image of that site, we put a grid on top, and then this single map will be distributed to all military members participating in that mission, regardless of their role, regardless of their location, so they can speak a common language about this site, even though they'd never been there before. And if we look at the challenges facing first responders when they show up to a 911 call at a school, it's remarkably similar to the situation we faced. So they're showing up in a time-sensitive environment, to unfamiliar terrain, sometimes a dangerous environment, and they often find themselves working with folks who they may rarely have contact with, all in different software systems, all trying to make really important decisions in a very short amount of time. And amidst all this chaos and complexity, we also expect first responders to simply know how to get to the location of that emergency, where the art room is, where the cafeteria is, and that's not the case. Some of you may have tried to navigate your kids' school on back to school night and know how difficult that can be to walk through a high school, large tactical nightmare building like that. So what a bill like this does is mandate that not just floor plans or blueprints are transmitted to first responders, but digital, verified, accurate pieces of mapping content, communication tools are given to all public safety agencies free of charge and on the systems they already use. So this mapping data lives not just at a local PD or fire department, but at the 911 call center, at dispatch, at those departments, and all the way down to mobile devices, so that everyone kind of along the workflow of that 911 call is seeing accurate location data and knows where they want to park, what door they want to go through, what hallway they want to turn down, and they're saving precious minutes in getting to that emergency, whether it's medical, fire, or a violent event. So that's just a little background on kind of where this comes from. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about the concept or this bill in particular.
Thank you so much for bringing this information to us. And tell me how long this takes to do a mapping in a school.
Yes, sir. On average, it takes us between 2 and 4 months to finish a mapping project. That's largely dependent on how quickly we can get whatever floor plans that school might already have and how quickly we can schedule an on-site walkthrough. So for us, we will never complete a map, from afar. We'll never do it digitally or virtually. We will put an on-site team who walks through every single building. It's the only way to ensure accuracy, and that's one of the tenets that you'll see here in the legislation as well. So depending on how quickly we can get on site, depending on how quickly we can turn around that product, between 2 to 4 months on average.
Okay, thank you. Representative Crowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the software you're talking about and having it on mobile devices and in dispatch and that sort of thing, where would that be housed? Will it be mobile friendly for your cell phone? Will it be on a publicly sourced location where they can access it? And if that's the case, how accessible will it be, or how secure will it be? Because there might be folks that might have bad intentions that could utilize this for, this information for not great intent.
Yes, sir, absolutely. I know that's a pressing concern and something we always have top of mind as well. So I'll kind of answer that in 2 parts. The first is who it goes to, and that's a conversation we have with the schools. And so once that map is complete, we want to talk to the school and say, who's the primary 911 call receiver and police department who responds to a call at your school? We presume they're probably going to want the maps and the school is going to be okay with it. And from there, we'll branch out to emergency medical technicians, fire departments, whoever else might be responsible, primary and secondary, for a call at that school. So it's always in conjunction with the school. And what we see 90% of the time is that it's a uniformed, certified professional firefighter or police officer, which means they have a background check. It's audited and refreshed every year. And they're typically only accessing the software when they're on shift, at work, using the software systems that are provided at work. So they're not bringing this home with them. That's typically how it goes in terms of who's getting it. As far as how they're getting it, this mapping data, we hold it in encrypted servers. It's sent via encrypted means, and it's being housed in the same computers and server systems that house criminal records, medical records, home addresses, phone numbers. It's all the same software suites and computer assets that police departments and fire departments already use, and that we do entrust already hold a lot of sensitive information about our communities and our citizens. So if we trust it's working today with those, this mapping data lives in the same place. It's certainly not available to the public domain. You won't download it on the school website or anything like that.
Vice Chair? You're on. No, to the vice.
Oh, me?
Yep, I'm sorry.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I work for a school system as a safety director. Didn't we have to do all this for the governor's requirement or the state requirement last year that we had to have the training, the active shooter training and all like that? Don't we already have these maps already?
So, sir, what typically has, including the state of Georgia, is some mandate or some regulation that requires that floor plans are provided to public safety departments, police departments, and fire departments. But if you'll allow me just a minute, I'll describe a little of why floor plans are inadequate in terms of emergency use. And the first is accessibility. So while that floor plan might be emailed to a police department, it's probably a PDF attachment, and that's not going to be the most seamless or quick thing to access when a 911 call is happening and we need things to appear instantly, on screens and in front of that dispatch or that fire, that police. And the second is the accuracy. So my company's mapped over 12,000 K through 12 schools across the country, and we have yet to ever find a floor plan that is accurate from what you see on paper to what you see in the real world. Things just change in terms of the labeling, in terms of hallways moving, doors moving. If you look at the after-action report from Uvalde, they did receive floor plans, but it wrongly depicted the location of doors and walls, and it led to bad decision-making at the tactical level of how they responded to that incident. Additionally, floor plans lack basic signage. So in a floor plan, you're not going to see classroom 12 or the teacher's lounge or the student parking lot. And you're not going to find the kind of assets that a first responder is looking for. So AEDs, trauma kits, the master key to that building to begin with, that's all captured in the digital mapping that we do, and that's reflected in the legislation as well. Yes, sir.
Representative Lott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So do you have a range for what it would cost for, let's say, a school?
Yes, ma'am. So on average, it costs about $4,000 to map a school, and that's a total price. So for us, that's creating an initial draft, going and actually walking the structure, walking through every hallway, every classroom, coming back and finalizing that map, and then distributing it to public safety in dozens of different file formats on all the technology systems they already use, which is not a one-time dissemination. It's, to us, a lifelong conversation. Every time that sheriff or captain turns over with a new replacement, we want to educate them on how to access the maps, how to use them, how to communicate with them in an emergency. So it's in perpetuity, and that's all included at that sticker price. It's on average $4,000 a school. A smaller elementary school with fewer floors is going to be cheaper than a large, complex high school. But as a planning number, we tend to look at $4,000 for a district.
And then what's the maintenance on that? Like, if you're staying engaged and involved, is there more money beyond the $4,000?
Yes, ma'am. So once that initial map is created, we will make sure that's disseminated forever. But we do run what's called a maintenance program. It's a very modest price. It's between $500 and $600 per year per school, which most schools are able to afford. And what that allows is for unlimited updates to that map throughout the year. So proactively, we'll reach out once a year and say, hey, have anything changed? But anytime throughout that year, if that school opens a new athletic complex or they want to relabel the B wing to the C wing or tear down the computer lab and put in a weight room, whatever it might be, they can call us. We'll make that change on the map and we'll redistribute that to first responder communities. And if it's significant enough, we'll go back out and rewalk that site.
And Mr. Chairman, can I ask one further question? Sure. So this is my own confusion, and it may be to the almost author of the bill, but not quite. I'm confused because in the code section that it directs me to, creation and operation of building mapping information systems for basically public, it looks to be for all public buildings that would have, require the emergency management group. Anybody that would require an emergency site I have an entire code section talking about building mapping that already exists. So my question is, and it also starts with the language, if funding is available. So I'm really confused about a couple of things. Why are we specifically trying to do this? And how does it relate to the code section that we have currently? Do you know the answer to that? That's a weird question. Probably I didn't word it well.
No, it's not a weird question. It's a question that is that the chairman and others are asking
Yeah.
too.
It's a good question. I can answer the first part. I can't answer the code section part. I'm not sure about what you're reading in the code section regarding just the different type maps for different government buildings. This one in particular, the reason for it is kind of to get a standardized mapping across the state where all emergency personnel would understand it, and so it could be seamless in emergency response. And I think that's going to be the key when you do your quadrants. So regardless if it's Miss Jones's room or the teacher's lounge or the history hallway, you're going to have a standard mapping where everybody can kind of understand what's going on. I think that's the key right now. It's across the board. You have to update your safety plans every year. GEMA has to approve it every few. They approve it. It's kind of a rubber stamp kind of situation. If your local school police or county police approve it, who's ever in charge of that safety plan. But this would basically standardize it. But you do have a safety plan every year that you do approve. And one of the things that, at first, what I like about it is there's multiple vendors out there. There's one here. I'm not sure if there's any more here in the audience or not. There's, from what I understand, about 10 across the state of Georgia that does this type mapping.
And to be clear, so this code section that we currently have, again, is for mapping. And what you're attempting to do here, though you have specified school, public or private school system, or independent private schools, this actually refers to basically any public building within a community if they have the funds available, and that grants be made available. This is grant funded as well, the bill that you are here with. And so forgive me,
No, I understand.
I'm having a little bit of
Yeah.
a process problem. We have in the past already created school funding grants. So if I'm understanding correctly, what you're attempting to do is in line 23 down is you're attempting to be very clear about the almost exact type of mapping you expect to see, and then you used the word, I think, consistent. Therefore, the expectation is that it is consistent mapping from school to school, and really that's really the gist of this bill versus this being more flexible in the fact that it is calling for mapping, it is grant funded, it is allowed a decision to be made at the state or local level, and it's any building. You're
Correct.
just going for something consistent
Just
with schools.
based on my experience, and this is just a one person talking, Rick Townsend, who through all those different levels, this type of map, it kind of hits home. This is kind of the home run for me of school mapping where it makes a difference. I can see this being useful in an emergency, and that's kind of why I bought into it. So that's the difference, Representative Lott, if that makes any sense.
I can appreciate that, and I can appreciate the consistency that you want to have, certainly, to be able to understand the maps. I do appreciate that. It sounds great on paper. I'm just a little slow.
No, not at
Thank
all. Mapping's, thank you.
Further questions from the committee? Let me ask one that, so all of this would come under the umbrella of the locals or the state, such as GEMA?
Yes, sir.
Who would it come under?
Basically, Gina's in charge of your annual safety plan, so they have to approve this report as well. I know you have school systems such as Gwinnett, Hall, and Atlanta Public Schools. They're already using this mapping themselves. They're using either the current safety grant money or other funds to pay for this. Those three school systems, two are probably two of the largest in the Southeast, Gwinnett and Atlanta Public City Schools. So basically, it's local funding or the grant funding.
Have you heard from any of the members of GEMA on this bill?
I have not personally, no. I was actually going to reach out to them when I got to a different
Was
level.
any of the members of GEMA involved in the putting this bill together?
I'll have to ask, phone a friend real quick if I can. That you know of? Not that I know of. I can do that between now and committee if that helps.
Okay. Chairman Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question about the bill. It's good. I do think we need to have it. Two things really. One, to make sure that it's secured so wrong parties don't get a hold of it. And number two, to make sure that part of this critical information would be a school that has handicapped or disabled children so they could be identified quickly. They may need to be evacuated, take longer. I would make sure that we include that in it. I don't know that it needs to be in the bill, but it does need to be noted.
That's a good point. I've
that
got
would
one
be
in a wheelchair.
identified. Thank you.
And that is standard apparently on this type map.
Okay, do we have further questions from the committee? The chair is not ready for a do pass yet. Let me recognize Representative Crowe.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to check, we have some representatives from GEMA here. Do y'all have anything you wanted to add, Director Stallings, or anybody from your team? Any input? Not to put you on the spot, you don't have to, I just didn't know, after hearing some of this, if it raised any concerns or quelled any concerns, or, oh, good, we got the senator here now too, so we can hit him with a few. And I guess just since, I guess this would fall under your purview.
Yes, sir.
Kind of how it's working now and what you see as far as the changes this might make.
Yes, sir. So to Representative Lott's point earlier, we've had some consistencies in needs. The other issue raised was that we do get something that is doable across all platforms. So I made this reference in a different committee. We have 2 Decatur's in our state. We know them. City of Decatur, County of Decatur. Outside of spelling, you're not going to find a whole lot in common as far as technologies, populations, numbers of just folks going in and out. So when we do these platforms, making sure that we build them not only to the school side, because that's extremely important, but to the folks that we expect to respond and their capabilities, also our 911 capabilities, our 911 centers. I know there's a standard that we have for GIO and GIS that we like to see all these maps come through. We like to put it on a specific platform to the point of the consistencies across the state, but we also have to be able to operate a reasonable level of expectation to those first responders, to their training levels, to all the things that we're dealing with. And I understand there are 10 different vendors across the state. I think that's extremely important that we see the diversity in that opportunity. But for us, as long as it's a consistent platform that is not only available to those in the law enforcement capacity, but also our 911 responders, our communities all around, that's where our heart goes out to, making sure that they're capable. And I'll answer any questions that the committee might have.
And you do have a question here, Representative Lott.
So I'll continue on with my prior. So do you agree then that being more specific, and have you, I know, I assume someone maybe has shown you the language of this legislation?
Yes, ma'am.
So do you agree that you have appreciation for the specifics of what the formats should be in this language? Now, which leads me to kind of a second point. The current code section is more broadly to public buildings in general.
That's correct.
And but this language is somewhat more specific. Do we need to have these specifications just blended within the current code section versus creating a specific requirement on the school systems? And so I guess, are you able to do within the code section you have now what you want to do? And is the only request that we have more specific guidelines for the section that we currently have?
I think probably the biggest hitter is the fact that we now have some money coming with the potential of the budget. In the past, I don't like to call out counties, but it's a statewide approach. We have 159 counties. You represent a diverse group of individuals, and you understand, going back to my Decatur reference, we have different building code requirements in our state. We have very different code sections that cover a large majority of our state. Some of our state is extremely old and doesn't have an updated floor plan. We get copies of literally hand-drawn because there's no architectural programs out there. So getting something done is better than nothing. So I know what you're getting at. This vein here is specifically to schools. We can't get specific enough with schools, I don't believe. I think schools are extremely important because you have to consider when a child dials 911, we have the ability to geolocate that child. And if it's overlaying a map, that gives us the ability to get there. And I think that's important. But to your point, these very specific needs would be great in all public facilities that we have to provide these resources to as well.
So currently, basically, this, we have in the past done school safety grants, but because they have the flexibility to choose what they want to do, they have not necessarily, again, we use Decatur, they have not necessarily done what is necessary for your agency to have a better means of getting things done. So this would benefit you because you would basically be the controller over these funds.
Well, we wouldn't be the controller over the funds, but we would very much be engaged in the school safety plan, as the representative mentioned. And we don't rubber stamp it, FYI. We go through very specific details because our Homeland Security coordinators are out there in a lot of cases helping sit there at the table and write these school safety plans for schools that don't have grant writers or they don't have the means to do that. So being able to be very closely engaged is our agency's responsibility, and it's a priority for us. So being there on the local level, we do appreciate that flexibility. But I go back to the schools themselves have been given home rule with what they do with theirs. So for some, they hired an SRO. For some, they put in metal detectors. For some, so it's very difficult to say, I know what's best for you from the 500,000 foot view when, again, I say that, and that was very specific in the governor's instructions of this funding, is that it is used locally by those locals to determine what is best for them. So I won't say what is best that they should use the money for. I think this is a great opportunity for schools to utilize this, but each school has their own personal needs as well, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, did that answer your questions on that? Representative Crow.
Just a couple that popped up during that. I know some schools have been mapped. Do y'all have access to all of these?
Yes, sir.
Schools
We
have been
have a
mapped.
secured server that we keep all school safety plans that are done on our format or that are presented to us. And with the House Bill 147, all schools should be reporting to us their school safety plan. Each one is done at the level of their school's capabilities, along with support of our field coordinators. And so those are on a secure server, yes, sir.
Okay. And to my earlier question of this gentleman, and I appreciate your answer, and I'm sure that that yours is secured and encrypted, but there's 10 different providers around the state. Are y'all able to, for these other providers that are doing these things that are maybe housed off-site, cloud-based, that sort of thing, do y'all have any kind of, I guess, oversight, for lack of a better word, or say in their security controls? I mean, these schools are doing these themselves, I guess, and so,
Yes, sir.
My concern is that some of these may go with a cheaper option that maybe don't have the security controls in place. And I didn't know if y'all had the ability to, especially through the grant funding, if y'all had the ability to have some say in that, or if there's any kind of standards or anything like that. I worry about, somebody being able to access these things and no computer is completely secure.
Correct.
And I worry about this information getting into the wrong hands of folks.
I think, and I'm not going to speak on behalf of the representative, but I think the intent of this is to make sure it is done in a secure and orderly fashion. I think that is extremely. If we do it in this manner too, I think we're raising the bar of what is acceptable. To your point that it's not just someone who has an idea who creates a platform, but that it does meet certain expectations. I can't control anything outside, but again, those schools have the ability, as mentioned, Gwinnett, City of Atlanta, they did that on their own. They didn't come through our agency. However, any mapping that they create that's a part of their school safety plan, we do have access to our controlled server, but we're not the owner of that information.
If
If I can add one thing too for GMAS, they do offer to come by your schools and personally walk it themselves. They'll actually come by every few years, if I remember correctly, automatically, just to make sure everything's updated, and they advise you on those policies. So they do a good job of really communicating with schools, and either if they have an SRO department or local sheriff's department, who's ever in charge of security of the school, they make sure they're on the same page. So when they do get that safety plan, they already know what it looks like because they were involved in it. And that's why I should have said it earlier, by the way.
Okay, other questions, Representative Vance?
No, sir, I withdrew mine.
Okay, you withdrew, okay. Let me get Chairman Taylor, and then I'll get you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having been to some of the schools in the Decatur City School I visited, and I once represented Decatur County, and there is a world of difference. Their high school is 5 miles out of town in Decatur County. It's not an inner city school. My thought process is every school does need to develop their own in each system. I want to make sure, are these plans, they file them with you, but does local law enforcement and first responders, they have them so everybody will be on the same page. And each one will be responsible for keeping them secure. They're not going to be published anywhere. It's up to the systems to, within itself, monitor it. That's my big concern. And I think the guardrails are in there. Yes.
Okay.
I can just speak quickly to that.
Yeah.
Prior to the House Bill 147, all school safety plans were originally required to be submitted to the local emergency manager. Unfortunately, in the state of Georgia, we have 39 full-time emergency managers. The rest of the state is covered by part-time emergency managers who wear many different hats. What we were finding is that the school boards who don't answer to the local emergency manager, a lot of times we're having trouble getting their hands on so they can disseminate that out. So now the law requires it to come to us through the local emergency manager, who has the ability then, and it's their responsibility, once we approve it, to disseminate to all their first responders, their sheriffs, PDs, SROs, things of that nature from our level back.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Also, Mr. Chair, if I can, if time is allowed, you have a representative, chiefs of police, who'd like to say something as well.
Let me get one more question here, and then I'll recognize him. Representative Crowe.
Thank you, sir. Just real quick on that, and to your point, the dissemination of these now, I know way back when I did it, we didn't have the technology that we have now, and most of ours were contained in books or folders or printed maps. Most of the things we're talking about now are going to be digitally created, digitally stored on a central server, and disseminated through software and devices. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Technical aspect.
And nothing, I know there's a lot of things in here that talk about what information to be in there and the compatibility and that sort of thing. And I just wonder if it might not be prudent to include something about some level of security or safe storage of some of this stuff, because to your point, they're not going to have them individually. I think they're going to be able to access it through a device that they have, and I just want to make sure that if we're going to do this, we maybe exercise some say in the security of it to make sure everybody's operating to that same standard too.
I think that's definitely worthy of an amendment if that's what you want to do. Talk to Senator Dixon, he agrees.
Yeah, that'd be friendly. I mean, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Senator, do you want to say a few words before I recognize Chuck?
First off, just want to apologize for my tardiness.
We understand.
It's the time of year. It's the season, I guess is what we would say. I'm not sure. It seems like they've covered it very well, but yeah, security is a big portion of this, and if there's something that needs to be added to make sure that we've got more security on that platform, I think that would definitely be a friendly amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to come forward, Chuck? If you'll step up to the mic there and address the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Chuck Clay. I'm here representing the chiefs of police, and as always, remember, less of me is always better, so I'll be very, very short and to the point. Chiefs of police wholeheartedly support this measure, and want it on the record that we're here certainly to work with. the amendments that were discussed certainly sound like improvements, and whatever the wisdom of both the author and this committee is, we're supportive, and with that, I'll hush up. Thank you.
You're always quick and to the point. We appreciate you. All right. Any other questions from the committee? Yes, sir. Tell us who you are and who you represent.
Mr. Chair, is it, Senator Payne's got to testify in another committee. Is it okay if he leaves and I stay?
Absolutely. That's a good representation there.
My name is Kyle Rodler. I'm the president of the Parents Safety Alliance. If you guys would look up Education Bill 20-2-1185, it requires that parents and students are included in the safety preparedness plans of every school in Georgia, and it's not happening. And I'm not here to complain. I'm here to help. I want to be that voice for you guys. I invented the All Safe app. We are happy to integrate with, it's like Uber for police is what we offer. I've emailed all of you the plan. Any officer on their off day can work at the nearest school, church, or Little League. All the kids are protected. The teachers are protected. They make extra money. Everyone wins. We fund the program. We're not asking for money, but we would love your cooperation. And I'd like to integrate with any technologies that you guys are adding, including the floor safety plans, any camera technology. We have weapons detection software. We have shooter detection software for the location. We have drones that deploy and follow the person if they are attacking a school so they can never escape. And this is a plan that's designed by students from Georgia State University and in cooperation with the master's program at Georgia Tech. And this is something that we have an AI bot that also skims social media posts. So if somebody makes something threatening, you get an email to the school and to the parents and to the principal as well as the authorities. It's a screenshot of what they sent, sends a drone to their house. Anywhere they go, they're followed. So nobody can do anything stupid anymore. And my name is Kyle with the Parent Safety Alliance. Our website is allsafeapp.com, and I would love to have the state of Georgia be the pioneer in this program, and then the other 50 states could jump on board. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments there. Do we have any question for him?
Sorry.
Anyone? Thank you for coming and offering that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other questions from the committee? Okay. I'm going to ask Representative Crow, Representative Vance, and our legal attorney to get together with Representative Townsend to work out any concerns and to where we'll have a clean bill going out of this committee back to the full committee. Is that agreeable with the members? Okay. All right. Having no other business to come before this committee, we stand adjourned.